The sovereign soul. Deconstructing the myth of the woman who lives alone. Have you ever wondered about the woman who lives alone? The one without a visible partner who doesn't seem to be searching for one. Society offers a quick and easy diagnosis. She must be lonely, heartbroken, or lacking options. But the truth is often more complex and uncomfortable, a reality that challenges the foundational myths of a woman's role. When a woman consciously chooses to be alone, she is not losing herself in the world. Instead, she is, for the first time, truly discovering herself. The silence surrounding a woman living alone is not emptiness, it is a sanctuary. Yet, a world terrified of quiet introspection rushes to label it. Those who cannot comprehend the value of this sacred space label her cold, distant, or arrogant. What they fail to see is that the fortress she has built was not designed to shut the world out. It was meticulously constructed to prevent her from losing herself again. Her solitude is not a sign of absence, but a powerful, resonating presence that challenges the very emotional status quo we've been taught to accept. The great psychologist Carl Jung once observed that everything we deny within ourselves becomes a part of our shadow. The woman who lives alone in quiet sovereignty is in many ways a living reflection of the collective shadow. She embodies the freedom that countless people dream of, but few dare to claim. There is something profoundly threatening about a woman who does not need a relationship to feel whole, as her very existence shatters the logic of control and dismantles the myth of emotional dependency. She serves as a mirror in which we see our fears of being truly, powerfully, and completely ourselves. This is the truth about women who live alone, not in sadness, but in sovereignty. What follows is not just their story, it is a revelation, a revolution, a reclamation of soul. Have you ever wondered why some women choose to live alone? No boyfriend, no partner, and they don't even seem like they are looking for one. The answer isn't loneliness, a lack of options, or heartbreak. It lies in something more uncomfortable, more unsettling, something that deconstructs everything we were taught about a woman's role. Because when a woman chooses to be alone, she isn't getting lost, she's finding herself. That kind of self-discovery doesn't come with applause, likes, or company. It comes with silence, strength, and a sort of freedom that most people still don't understand. No, she's not lonely. She's selective. She's not cold. She just got tired of burning for people who never wanted to feel the warmth. There's something profoundly threatening about a woman who doesn't need a relationship to feel whole. This shatters the logic of control, dismantles the myth of emotional dependency, and reveals a brutal truth. Most men don't know how to handle a woman who doesn't need saving. Additionally, most women are still learning to recognize themselves in that silent yet deafening mirror of power. Carl Jung once said that everything we deny in ourselves becomes part of our shadow. Many of these single women reflect the collective shadow. They represent what many dream of becoming, but few dare to embody. They don't scream for love. They whisper their choices. They can put themselves on display to attract attention. Instead, they retreat to preserve themselves. They're less interested in charming princes and more focused on their peace. This makes people uncomfortable because while the world demands urgency in relationships, these women have discovered the power of being with themselves. The woman who lives alone without a boyfriend isn't lost. She's operating on a different level. A level where nothing is begged for, it's chosen. Where approval isn't needed, presence is enough. And maybe that's why she sparks so much criticism, so much judgment, and so many attempts to label or explain her. But what many still don't understand is that behind her apparent absence lies a presence that fills, transcends, and challenges the emotional status quo. She doesn't want just any kind of love. She wants something that doesn't diminish her. And until that comes along, she stands firm, whole, and complete. Perhaps you didn't understand it at the moment. Maybe you think it's exaggeration, pride or emotional damage in disguise. But deep down, way deep down, there's a question within you, a quiet one that pulses even when you try to ignore it. What if that silent path is the only one that leads to the most essential kind of love, the one that starts with you? The silence surrounding a woman who lives alone is not emptiness. It is a profound presence. It's a sanctuary. Those who don't appreciate the value of that space often label her cold, distant, or even arrogant. But what few people see is that she didn't build that fortress to shut the world out. She built it to avoid losing herself. Carl Jung also said that everything when facing ourselves, we end up projecting onto others. And maybe that's why so many women still confuse solitude with absence when, in reality, it can be fertile ground for self-discovery. While most people seek fulfillment through external connections, this woman turned her gaze inward. There, in the vastness of her unconscious, she confronted the ghosts she had avoided for years: childhood wounds, unspoken abandonments, attachments disguised as love. Her decision to be alone didn't stem from an open wound, but from a scar that had finally healed. She hadn't stopped believing in love. She just stopped accepting what others called love when it only made her feel smaller. This woman knows chaos. She's loved until she lost herself. She's given too much. She's begged for crumbs that never should have been offered in the first place. But at some point, she woke up. And that awakening wasn't sudden. It was a series of disappointments that stopped hurting and started teaching. What you see now isn't coldness. It's emotional maturity. Maturity is scary because it demands presence, depth, and honesty. She doesn't want just any company. She wants reciprocity. She's no longer attracted to promises but to real presence. That may be why she seems unreachable to many. She doesn't want to be saved. She wants to be seen. Achieving that requires more than charm or sweet words. It takes courage to dive into the depths where few dare to venture. This is where many give up, not because she's difficult, but because she's whole. When a woman becomes whole, she awakens two extremes in the world: admiration and fear. Admiration from those also seeking wholeness. Fear from those who still live in halves, waiting for someone else to make them feel complete. She doesn't want to be anyone's completion. She wants to be alongside someone who has also found themselves. Until then, she remains alone, not by fate's whim, but out of loyalty to her soul. This woman isn't hiding. She's protecting herself. There is a vast difference between isolating oneself and preserving oneself. However, the world doesn't readily accept a woman like this. A world that still preaches happily ever after exists only in pairs. A world that distrusts those without a partner as if that were a sign of failure. Carl Jung once said that where convention rules, there's little room for authenticity. This woman doesn't live by convention. She lives by essence. She hears phrases like, "You're too picky. You should be more open. Nobody's perfect." And she smiles a calm, steady, almost ironic smile, because she knows that what many call picky is simply the bare minimum. It took her decades to realize what she deserves. She's not looking for perfection. She's looking for someone mature enough to love without destroying. Someone who's done the inner work and has already faced their challenges. And let's be honest, that's not something you find on just any street corner. The discomfort she causes isn't in what she says. It's in what she represents. She's living proof that it's possible to be happy without relying on anyone else. And that tears mask genuine emotions. Men who prey on female insecurity feel threatened. Women who still seek approval often feel judged and criticized. But she isn't here to confront anyone. She's just being. The authenticity of someone who has liberated herself is in itself a brutal mirror to those still living in chains. This woman isn't in a hurry. She doesn't need to rush things to please anyone. She respects her own pace. For that, she stirs a silent fury in a society that wants everything now. She wants depth while the world chases distractions. She craves presence while the world offers only superficial availability. She longs for soul-level connections, while everyone else strives to appear interesting on their Instagram stories. And when she says no, it's not a game, it's the truth. When she walks away, it's not drama, it's self-defense. When she chooses to stay home instead of going out with someone hollow, it's not arrogance, it's clarity. That clarity, earned through pain and surrender, is her greatest revolution. Because she doesn't live to please, she lives to be. And that simple act of being is what makes her so dangerous to the system. What unsettles people most about this woman isn't her solitude. It's her isolation. It's the peace she's found within herself. Carl Jung taught that those who look outward dream, but those who look inward awaken. And it was precisely that inner journey that she undertook. It wasn't easy. It was a grueling process of stripping off masks, confronting the ghosts of emotional dependency, and rebuilding herself piece by piece. She no longer defines herself through the eyes of others. She sees herself through her own eyes. And that changes everything. How many times have you wondered whether being alone is a failure or a freedom? How often have you felt the need to justify yourself for not having someone by your side? This woman has felt that way too. She once believed there was something wrong with her for being alone in a world that idolizes couples, even those who are unhappy. But one day, she realized it's better to be alone than to be invisible in a relationship. In that day, she made a pact with herself. She would never again accept less than what she truly deserves. Her path is not a straight line. There are days of doubt, moments of nostalgia, and nights of deep silence. But there's also a strength that grows with each decision made in awareness. She learned that true love doesn't cage, doesn't consume, and doesn't manipulate. The love she seeks is the kind that liberates, that adds, and that supports without suffocating her. Until that love arrives, she chooses to continue growing on her own, not out of pride, but from integrity. This woman embodies Jung's concept of individuation. She shattered, confronted her shadow, descended into the unconscious, and returned, more whole than ever. And now that she recognizes herself, she refuses to be half of anything again. She doesn't want someone to complete her. She wants someone to share that awareness with. That's intimidating because it demands emotional responsibility. Unfortunately, few are willing to love responsibly. Most still love out of lack, out of possession, out of fear. And if she walks alone today, it's because every step echoes the lessons learned. Every no she gives is an act of self-respect. Every absence she imposes is a reminder that love should never be begged for. She no longer needs to prove anything to anyone. That certainty, born from the deepest part of her soul, transforms everything around her, because a woman who has rediscovered herself becomes dangerous, not because of her weapons, but because of her clarity. The woman who lives alone, without a boyfriend, is not the same woman who once begged to be loved. Something inside her broke, and it was precisely that break that set her free. Sometimes it is only in collapse that the soul finds its new form. Carl Jung used to say that the tree that grows to heaven must also have roots that reach down to hell. And that's precisely what she lived through. She descended into the hell of her own story, confronted ancestral fears, inherited pain, and traumas that weren't just hers, but those of all the women who came before her. She broke cycles. She said no to relationships that repeated the same toxic pattern. She learned that it wasn't her responsibility to heal anyone, save anyone, or accept crumbs out of fear of being alone. And when she stopped settling for less, the world tried to convince her she was wrong, but she stood her ground. First with uncertainty, then with awareness, and finally with invulnerability. Because someone who has lived in their abyss no longer fears absence. She learns to nourish herself with silence and to warm herself with her presence. She's not unreachable. She simply no longer allows herself to be invaded. There's a world of difference between opening your heart and letting yourself be torn apart. She opens, yes, but only for those who come in truth, not through rehearsed speeches or empty promises. Asterisk, she has seen enough to distinguish between presence and performance. Her intuition has sharpened. Her energy acts as a filter. She can sense from a distance what lacks depth, and she doesn't hesitate to walk away. Her transformation is not superficial. It is archetypal. It's as if she's tapped into an ancient wisdom, an old memory that women weren't born to serve, but to express. Not to be shaped, but to overflow. In accessing that memory, something awakened in her, a wild woman, intuitive, emotionally sovereign, a woman who, though alone, is far from lost. She's in communion with something greater, her destiny. No matter how much they try to reduce her with labels like cold, rugged, or distant, nothing sticks because she no longer lives to fit in. She lives to expand. She no longer fights for attention. She radiates a sense of presence. She's no longer waiting to be chosen. She does the choosing. That reversal of logic confuses those who still try to control the feminine, but she's no longer there. She's already crossed the threshold. On the other side, she discovered that the real relationship begins only after you've loved yourself enough not to need anyone. There's something sacred in the way she walks through the world. She doesn't need applause or public validation. Her confidence is quiet and understated, and it's in that silence that her true strength resides. Carl Jung said that everything we face within eventually becomes our destiny. Perhaps that's why this woman, by choosing herself again and again, has become the author of a destiny that few can understand but many secretly envy. She no longer tries to fill voids with promises or convince anyone that she deserves love. She doesn't beg for space in anyone's life, because she's learned that presence should never be demanded, it should be invited. When the invitation doesn't come from truth, she declines. She doesn't respond with anger or bitterness. Instead, she steps away with the dignity of someone who has been lost too many times to let the same wound happen again. What few people understand is that this woman still longs for love. She still wants to be held, touched, and chosen. However, she desires it without losing herself, as she has spent too long trying to fit into molds that are too small for her soul. Now she only offers herself where there is space to be whole. That requires a level of maturity that goes far beyond romance. It requires awareness and the courage to face one's own shadow while still choosing the love. She's not looking for fairy tales. She's seeking a soul alliance, a connection without domination or submission, where both can grow alongside each other without dimming their colors, silencing their pain, or shrinking their dreams. And if that seems too much for some, so be it, because she'd rather wait than survive on emotional crumbs. To many, that sounds like arrogance, but it's just self-love in its purest form. We are witnessing a new archetype of woman, a woman who has walked away from the superficial and dived into the depths, who grew tired of being merely desired and chose to be respected, who chose to be alone, not because she gave up on love, but because she began to understand that real love never demands self-denial. When a woman realizes this, her entire world begins to change. She doesn't need to raise her voice to be heard. Her presence speaks before any words. Wherever she goes, the energy shifts as if something in the room realigns subtly but unmistakably. This isn't mysticism. It's energy. It's the weight of someone who has already faced the most brutal inner wars and chose to return in peace. Not because she conquered all her fears, but because she learned to live with them without being defeated. Carl Jung would say she found wholeness not by eliminating opposites, but by integrating them. This woman embraces love. She has learned not to submit to unbalanced relationships where one must dim so the other can shine. She longs to love, but in a way that her essence doesn't need to be edited. A love where she can be both shadow and light, laughter and tears, silence and storm. She realized that those who only love the pretty parts haven't yet learned what love truly is. Those who demand constant sweetness still don't understand the beauty of bitterness, which is so necessary for growth that she's too whole to settle for halves. She's too free to accept prisons disguised as care and too sensitive to endure shallow bonds, and at the same time, strong enough to keep choosing this path. Even when it hurts, even when it's lonely, even when it's misunderstood. That is the journey of an awakened soul, giving up instant validation in exchange for more profound truth. Deep down, the world fears women like her. Women who don't need. Women who don't bow. Women who refuse to be shaped because they challenge invisible structures, question old patterns, and break silent emotional contracts that once proclaimed a woman only has worth if she is with someone. And when she breaks those contracts and rewrites her narrative, she inspires others. For the system, that is a dangerously revolutionary move. So she continues, sometimes with tears in her eyes, sometimes with her chest held high, but always with her feet firmly on the ground, because now she knows she's not alone. She's with herself, and after everything she's been through, that is more than enough. The love that comes afterward won't be salvation. It will be a celebration. It won't come to fill her. It will come to overflow. When a woman chooses to walk alone, the world rushes to convince her she's making a mistake. But deep down, she feels something aligning within her. It's not pride or rebellion. It's a rare kind of wisdom that can only be born in silence. The same wisdom Jung called individuation, the process of becoming fully who you are, without masks, without compromise. And when that happens, nothing outside her holds more power than the truth that pulses inside her chest. That truth doesn't need to be shouted. It can manifest in the way she quietly closes a door without resentment, in how she withdraws when the environment no longer nurtures her, and in the way she smiles in peace, even when no one is by her side. She has realized that being alone is not a punishment. It's a vow of loyalty to her soul. And the soul of an awakened woman does not submit, does not dim, does not beg. It simply is. And that is enough. The world will keep trying to tell her she's missing something. It will continue to present distractions, superficial princes, and love made for show. But she's already seen behind the curtain. She's already understood that it's not about finding someone. It's about never losing yourself again. And when that realization blooms, everything changes. Desire transforms into discernment. Lack turns into choice. Waiting becomes a journey. What once hurt now teaches. What once bound now sets free. You can feel it deep within. That stirring, that spark. Maybe it's a memory, an old wound, a nostalgia that never made sense. Maybe it's the image of a woman you once knew, or the woman you've become. In either case, something within you is asking to be seen more clearly. Something that no longer fits into old molds. Something that, if you allow it, could completely transform how you relate to love, to others, and most importantly, to yourself. That woman who lives alone is more than just someone who doesn't fit the mold. She is a living symbol of emotional freedom. She serves as a reminder that it's possible to rebuild without haste, without fear, and without needing to prove anything to anyone. She doesn't walk ahead of anyone, but she doesn't follow either. She carves her unique, enviable path, and along that journey, she lights small fires for others who are waking up too. If this story resonated with something inside you, perhaps it's because, deep down, you too are ready for a new kind of love. A love that begins with reconciling with yourself. A love that thrives on silence, presence, and truth. A love that can't be negotiated, begged for, or disguised. And if that love hasn't come yet, perhaps it's because you first needed to become the woman who no longer accepts less than she deserves. If this message has found you at the right moment, or awaken someone you had forgotten was living inside you, then I invite you not to keep it to yourself. Please share this video with other women who need to remind themselves of their strength. Like it, comment, and subscribe to this channel, not out of impulse, but out of choice. When something touches the soul, the least we can do is let it continue resonating within and through us. This woman whole, radiant, and unwavering is not a myth. She is real, she is rising, and she is rewriting the rules. She no longer lives to conform, to earn a place in someone's heart, or to exchange parts of herself for the illusion of love. She walks alone, not because she has failed to find love, but because she has succeeded in discovering herself. And when love arrives, it will not complete her. It will celebrate her. It will stand beside her, neither ahead nor behind, because she is no longer seeking wholeness. She is the flame. She is the sanctuary. She is the beginning of a new kind of love, one that starts and ends with truth.